Hey folks, thanks for tuning in. Looking forward to another good show. I hope y'all had a good weekend. I know I did. Got to go to the Oak Ridge Boys, Georgia Mountain Fairgrounds. Had a great concert. If you like country and gospel music, they never failed to entertain. The place was packed out. I heard someone complaining fire marshal wouldn't allow this. Additionally, leaves are beginning to change. It's the reason so many folks visit our area. From a real estate standpoint, normally July is about our busiest month, boots on the ground, but arguably October, our leaf lookers, our fall folks, is our second busiest month, then June normally. So I anticipate this being a busy month. Today, we're going to look at why hire a real estate agent. Essentially, we're let the battle begin between the FSBO seller and the real estate agent. Full transparency, I've sold a home as a FSBO. When I practiced law in Florida, I sold one as a FSBO before I moved up here. So I'm not anti-FSBO, but I did want to. I'm a stats guy. I like to review the stats. I think you go with the stats most probable. And today we're going to look at the stats on FSBOs, and we're also then going to get to, if we have time, we're going to get to hiring a real estate agent. Things to look for, questions to ask to make sure you get the most competent representation. Again, today, why hire a real estate agent? FSBO seller versus the real estate agent. FSBO being for sale by owner. For sale by owner, seller versus the real estate agent. Let the battle begin. First off, the first thing is that FSBO homes typically sell for about 26% less on average. So you may be thinking you're saving money, but right off the bat, they tend to sell for significantly less than one represented by a real estate agent. That's an average that's out there. I know this, a lot of the stats I've come across vary from study to study. That one remained pretty consistent among the different articles I read preparing for today. Number two, only 11% of for sale by owner sellers succeed. Only about 11%. Now that varied. I saw as low as 8. I saw as high as 11%. Now approximately 25% to 30% of all sellers start out as FSBO. They try and sell it themselves, and I get it. Save the money. But it actually ends up costing them more money, and only about 8 to 11% actually succeed, whereas 25 to 36% start out as FSBO. Most of them end up hiring a real estate agent. There was a recent study that came out, and it's what FSBO sellers find most difficult in selling. And a lot of this just makes common sense. The number one thing was prepping the home is the toughest job. 12% of the sellers said that it was a tough job getting everything prepared to sell, which makes sense. They've got a full-time job and they're trying to do a second full-time job, that is getting the home sold. Number two was 10% of FSBO sellers hate the paperwork. Well, I can tell you I hate the paperwork too. I do a ton of it, but I understand they're not liking the paperwork. If you're going to go FSBO, get a lawyer on board early on, would be my recommendation if you go FSBO. And that is for sale by owner again. Number three, 6% of sellers struggle to sell on time. A lot of folks trying to sell a home have a time within which they hope to sell. They either have to be somewhere or they're just in a hurry. And 6% of them hated not being trained marketers. They weren't sure, they weren't able to do things to speed up the sale. Number four, 5% of for sale owners wish they had more time to focus on selling. I really think that ties into the number one as far as having one job and then trying to do a second job. Statistically, they say that if you're an agent, you want to try and get for sale by owner business, you want to communicate with them on a Monday or a Tuesday. And that's because most for sale by owners think they're going to sell their homes and they work a job. And then the weekend comes and that's when they're sure they're going to sell their home, At the end of the weekend, when the home's still not sold, that is the time within which they begin to doubt, maybe I ought to hire a professional. Number 5, only 6% of FSBO sellers list on the MLS. And that's significant because by far a majority of real estate is sold through the MLS. I think it's around 91% of homes that are sold through the MLS. And it's the MLS that feeds out to the Zillows, the Realtor.coms, the TroyaTheHome.com, Home Finder. And that's where a lot of buyers go to look. So only, what was that number again? 6% of FSBO sellers list on the MLS. Number 6, pricing the home is the hardest part. Or it said 9%. I think that's probably a little off. Pricing the home correctly was the most difficult for 9% of FSBO sellers, as they simply look at what other homes are selling for in their area and they choose a similar price. That fails to take into account unique aspects of the home, such as upgrades, features, repairs, things that could affect, increase, or decrease their price. They just don't really know the market. Just because your neighbor's home sold for X doesn't mean yours is going to sell for X. In the mountains, that is particularly true. The homes up here, we don't have large builders coming up and building 2,000 homes in one subdivision. And you got plan 1, 2, or 3. Most of the homes are custom built. They're unique, so it varies from home to home. So just whatever your neighbor's home sold for isn't necessarily the best means by which to judge your home. For example, view. I can think of Young Harris Mountain, a lot on the lake side of the road. You go to the top of Young Harris Mountain, Harris Ridge, a lot on the lake side. That is the side where you have a nice view of Lake Chateau, sells for quite a bit more than a lot directly across the street that just has a valley or woods view. I've seen homes side by side, but at the angle one was built, they had a beautiful view of the lake, and then at the angle the other one was built, they had very little to no view. So there are a lot of factors that go into pricing a home. I always say pricing a home is some math and science, but a lot of art also. And it's riding the market. It's knowing where your market not only is, but the trend. In the last 2 years, if you listed a home and you listed it based solely upon the comps, then you might have undersold it within a week or two because the market was trending upward. So I get for why pricing the home was hard for a lot of FSBOs. Finally, number 7, many FSBO sellers still end up paying a commission. The majority of for sale by owners still have to pay that 3% commission to a buyer's agent. What they're really seeking to save is that 3% by listing it themselves, but they end up paying 3% to a buyer's agent. And it's very common in our area that someone would put a home out there for sale by owner. You'll approach them as an agent and say, will you pay me a commission as a buyer's agent if I bring a buyer in? And most of the time they do, by far a majority. In fact, 77% of all sellers, FSBO or not, offer a buyer's agent a commission, 77%. So they end up paying 3%. So really what they end up saving is maybe the 3%, approximately 8 to 11% of the time. According to the study, the top 5 reasons sellers choose a FSBO, which this is kind of one of those duh studies. Number 1, wanted to avoid paying a realtor a commission fee. Duh, they want to save money. I get that, I did that myself. 2, and this is by far when you see that approximately, I think studies show from 8 to 11% sell by FSBO. This is the most common one area where they attract their buyer from. During the break, one of my fellow agents, George Lausarica, agent at Century 21 Black Bear Realty, and both Packy, I use the term MLS, and sometimes we use trade terms that we really ought to explain. MLS is the multiple listing service. It's the service by which realtors, when they obtain in a listing, they place the listing on the MLS, whereby all agents can have access to it. It's also the local multiple listing service, MLS, that then sends it out, and it's then ultimately syndicated to the national websites such as Zillow, Realtor.com, etc. And before we had all that, realtors actually just had books. A book would come out periodically, and it would be all the new listings. So as an agent, you lived and died by that book. Got into real estate about 18, 19 years ago, and we were transitioning. We were at the end of the book period, just beginning the techie period, so to speak, of real estate. But when I use the term MLS, I mean multiple listing service. But right before the break, we were talking about the top 5 reasons sellers choose for sale by owner. The number 1, of course, is they want to save money. They want to avoid that commission. I understand that. Number 2, and this is of the 8 to 11% that succeed in selling as a FSBO, this is the number 1 category. They sold it to a family member, friend, or neighbor. That is by far the most common FSBO you have in any market. A friend or neighbor, or more typical, a family member buys the property. Number 3, an interested buyer contacted the seller directly. That is becoming more and more the norm in the last couple of years. We had a lot of folks looking for homes, and they couldn't find one, so they would see it because of the significantly low inventory, which amazed me last week when we were doing the third quarter review. Maybe 3 years ago, and I can't remember if it was Clay or Towns County, we had almost 250 homes for sale. Right now we've got like 66 homes. But in that tight inventory period, a lot of buyers literally start knocking on doors, sometimes agents. They find out exactly what their buyer is seeking, and they find it, and then they start knocking. Sending a letter out this week to someone who has a vacant lot. It's not for sale, but just wanting to see I have a buyer that would be interested in it. Not unusual, and that's the number 3 reason sellers choose for sale by owner. Number 4 is did not want to work with an agent. I used to practice law. No one likes hiring an attorney. No one likes having to hire a real estate agent. I get that. That was the number 4 reason. I will say what's kind of funny, that's the number 4 reason they don't, but I think that really probably ties back to the commission, not wanting to pay a commission, because 89% of sellers, and this stat always remains around 87, 89% of sellers would use the same agent again. When they're polled, it's worth noting that bad real estate agents are the exception, not the rule, which is partly why FSBO sellers represent only a small fraction of overall home sales. 89% of sellers who work with an agent say they definitely or probably use the same agent again if they had to buy another property or sell their current one. That's a pretty high number, and I think it indicates the majority of sellers are happy with the experience that they have working with a real estate agent. But that said, the number 4 reason, out of the top 5, the number 4 reason is sellers choose for sale by owners. They don't want to work with an agent. Again, I think that ties back to not wanting to pay a commission. I get that. And the number 5 reason in the survey was just other, which I think the top 4 pretty well covers it. The top 5 reasons sellers choose realtors, part of the study, was number 1, wanted to sell within a specific time period. We talked about that earlier. One of the tools an agent should have is vastly superior marketing. Any agent that sells a tremendous amount of property has systems set up to sell a property for top dollar and quickly. And the number 1 reason sellers chose realtors was they wanted to sell within a specific time frame. Number 2 was they needed help pricing the home competitively. I would probably move that to number 1, but maybe these folks got a great sense of urgency to have to move. But real estate's real easy. 3 P's: property, price, and promotion. Property, price, and promotion. I think price is probably the most important. items. Folks needing help pricing the home was the number 2 reason sellers chose realtors. The number 3 reason in this study was they wanted help marketing the home to buyers. I think that is the obvious one. We do this for a living most of the time 7 days a week. Number 4, wanted help figuring out repairs to increase listing price. Not uncommon. Most of the time when you're out working with someone, initially a seller, as you go through the home, probably one of the more common questions is, what do you see we need to change? What do we need to repair, fix, replace, etc.? What are your ideas on that? That's probably one of the most common questions, and it makes top reason number 4. And finally, number 5, again, this is an obvious one, wanted help finding a buyer. I think that ties in to, you're wanting to sell your home, you have a full-time job. When do you think you're going to sell your home? Normally they think on the weekends. Well, they want some help during the week. So that's why they hire a real estate agent. So why hire a real estate agent? That's our question today. Now let's look at some of the reasons. We've looked at some of the reasons according to the study. Now I'll give you my opinion. Number 1, by far, is to recommend an appropriate price. And we talked about the 3 P of real estate. Property, price, promotion. A decent property, aggressively promoted at the right price, will sell in any market. I was here in 2006 when our market started to turn south, and 7 when we started experiencing a lot of foreclosures, and by 2008 when nationally it hit, we had massive amounts of foreclosures. But individuals could still sell if their home did not have major issues, if it was aggressively promoted and they priced it to be competitive. Trying to sell an overpriced home nowadays is nearly impossible, and I know the last couple of years have been abnormal, but we've had abnormal inventory, that is significantly down inventory, and we've had cheap money. Interest rates have been at historical lows. They almost paid you to buy a house. It's unusual times, but historically it boils down to the 3 P's: property, price, and promotion in real estate. The number 2 reason is to help you prepare your home for sale. And that, as I mentioned earlier in reviewing that recent study, everybody always asks, what do I need to do to sell my home? Do I need to paint? Do I need to fix this? Do I need to fix that? What will help my home sell faster? And a good agent has a vendor list. They have a list of best vendors to help. I will say that that's been a hard list to keep up, a hard list to maintain of late because of the boom. In the last couple of years, a lot of the handymen I used to use, the painters, the drywall guys, they are working full-time elsewhere. So that list has been hard for someone who's in the business 6 to 7 days a week. But the number 2 reason I think it aids an individual is we can help you prepare for the sale. Number 3, and I think this is by far the largest. Remember, property, price, promotion is promotion. The client always really dictates the shape of the property, whether it's clean, whether it's been decluttered, whether it's been depersonalized, whether the home looks its best. It's really in the client's hands, the seller's hands. Price, we can make a recommendation as to price, but you really set the price. What we can control is promotion, and marketing is by far, I think, an agent's most important job. I can tell you in the last year I've done almost 100 hours in training in marketing, and we will continue. We've had a lot more to cover, especially questions to ask your agent when you're looking to hire one. This is Rick Andrews. As always, If you're looking to buy or sell, please give me a call, 828-557-9139. Thanks for listening.